Welcome back, my fellow Python programmers, to a brand new video, and in this one we're going to be creating the Pig Latin program as a Python exercise. And we're going to be covering the following topics. So, if at any point you feel that you're enjoying the contents of this video, please make sure to slap that like button because I need to beat the YouTube algorithm, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, we need to make sure that we understand the rules of Pig Latin. So, first of all, if a word begins with a vowel, and vowels are A, E, I, O, or U, and sometimes Y is also considered a vowel, but in this case, I'm going to just consider the following letters only as vowels. We add way to the end of a word. So, for example, algorithm that starts with an A, which is a vowel, we simply add way at the end. So algorithm becomes algorithm way, and eat becomes eat way. Next, if a word begins with any other letter, meaning that if it doesn't start with any of the following letters, we actually have two levels to Pig Latin. The first level is going to be taking the first letter only. Keep this in mind. We take the first letter only, put it on the end of a word, and then add an A. So for example, Python starts with a P. We take the first letter, so it doesn't start with A, E, I, O, or U. We take the P, put it at the end, and then add an A at the end. So Python pay. And then computer, for example, it's the same. We take the C, we put it at the end right here, and then we add A. So this computer becomes computer. I'm not sure how to pronounce Pig Latin, but this is a great way to exercise string manipulation. Now the second level and the harder level is going to be taking all letters at the beginning of a word up to the first vowel and then remove, so are removed, and then added to the end of the word followed by an A. So for example, think, as you can see, think starts with a T, but it does not have a vowel right after it. It starts with a T, then has an H. So we not only remove the T, we also remove the H. So thing becomes in kthai. So, if you can even pronounce this, but as you can see, the T and H were moved to the end, and then the A, Y, or I were added. Now, finally, this should also be applied to sentences where every word is converted individually, and then they are joined all together. So, this is the Pig Latin rules. If you want to really challenge yourself, you can pause the video right now and go finish this off. You try to do all of this on your own, but if you want, I have this guide for creating the Pig Latin program. You can pause the video, you can simply use the rules, but this is going to be a step-by-step guide. So this is your chance to leave. 3, 2, 1. First of all, you need to define a function that takes in a string word. Pretty simple, nothing too much in here. Inside, you'll need to check if the first letter starts with a vowel. If so, return the word with a way at the end. Pretty simple, nothing too much in here. If not, you need to put the first letter at the end and say Y. Now in here, it's very crucial that you use slices. If you don't remember how slicing a string or a list works, you can always go back and watch the video. I will suggest it somewhere at the top. Next, you'll need to get inputs from the user in a while loop and apply the function. So we want to keep asking the user for inputs every single time, not just a single word, just keep asking for a word and then return that word in Pig Latin. Now, if the first letter is not a vowel, I want you to enumerate over the word. And why are we doing this? This is going to be the level 2, where we get the index of the first letter that's not a vowel and set all previous letter to the end and then add A. Now, if you remember, in the rules, the first level was to simply take the first letter that was not a vowel and put it at the end and then add an A. In the second level is to take all the letters until we get to the first vowel and then add them to the end and then add an A. So the way we are able to do this is through getting the index, because remember, we can index a string. So every single character inside of a string has a certain index that starts at 0. Keep that in mind. So what we'll do is we'll use the enumerate that will allow us to get the index. And if you don't know how enumerate works, you can research that, of course, or maybe I've mentioned it in a previous video, but I'm not sure which one. probably in the lists one. You can use the enumerate, which returns the index and the item, and then you can use that index to slice all of the letters to the end. That will be a challenging thing for you to do. Now we need this applied to sentences, so define a function that takes in a sentence of strings, so a string that is full of words, which makes a sentence. Get the words out of the sentence using the split. I haven't covered the split yet, so you need to go and research that. Convert each word to Pig Latin and append it to a list. And finally, return a string sentence of this list using the .join. Again, something I have not covered. You'll have to do your own research. So pause the video right now, and if you want, you can pause the video and go do the program on your own. If not, you can just wait for me to create this code for you. So this is your chance to pause and try to do your best. Okay, fellow Python programmers, how did you do with your own program? Let me show you the first and easiest function in here. And for you, it might not be easy, but the most important part is trying to do your best and then figuring out where you could have done better. First of all, we've defined the function, pretty simple. If you're not sure how functions work, I'm going to list it somewhere at the top. We've named our function Pig Latin Word Converter, a very simple function name. So whenever you're naming your functions, I'm just kidding. It's a very bad name, but I'm not good with words. I'm just good with programming. Anyways, whenever you're naming your functions, it should be something that reflects what this function actually does. So in my case, this is a Pig Latin word converter. It takes in a word, which should be a string. We don't want to program too much. We'll just take the person at face value and we'll know that a string will always be sent to this. Then we define the vowels. So I've defined a string that has all the vowels A, E, I, O, and U. And then on this line of code, we check if the first letter, so this line checks if the first character of word, by accessing it through these square brackets around it, is present in the string vowel. So we check if the first character is in the vowel. So essentially what we do is we check if the first letter is in vowels. If it is, then what we do is we simply return the word plus A by following the rules. But if it's not, if it's otherwise, if it's not part of these vowels, then what we do is we take the substring of the word from the second character to the last. So we go from the first character right here. Remember, we always start at 0. So we go from the second character until the end. When we don't specify anything in here, that means we go until the end, plus we add to it the last or the first character at the end, and then we append it again with an A, Y, or A. So this is how the simplest function works. Now let's go ahead and get the inputs from the user. Okay, so as you can see in here, we created a while loop that is while true. That means this does not stop, and we haven't created any break. Basically, in order for us to stop this while loop, we would simply just stop the program, and that's okay. So in here, we get the input from the user, and then we put it in the variable word. Again, input, we've already covered this. I'm going to link it somewhere around here in the variables. Enter a word to translate into Pig Latin. This is the prompt, and then we print out Pig Latin translation, and we use the f string. Again, f string, something we've covered in the video that I've already linked. So we apply the function to the word, or the word we send it as a parameter to the function. So when I right click and I run, and here let's start off with the word Michael. So M should be added at the end, as you can see, and then we have May. Let's try something that actually starts with a vowel. I'm going to say always. So as you can see, always A, as you can see, way. So something I forgot to say, that it has to end with way, not A. So this was on my part. This is a mistake on my part. As you can see, always way. Let's try something else. Interesting. I'm very bad at grammar, by the way, so I may make a lot of mistakes when typing these words. Interesting way. Let's try something else. Let's try kicking. So kicking, we remove the K from the start, we add it at the end, and then we add an A. Now it's time to use the second level where we move all the letters to the end until we encounter a vowel, and this is going to be slightly harder. Okay, so this is how we would move all of the characters or all of the letters until we encounter the first vowel to the end and then add an A. So first of all, obviously, I just commented this one out because I wanted to leave room for the following. So what do we do in here? First of all, on this for loop, what we do is we start a for loop that iterates over the word with the enumerate word, providing both the index in the variable that we've conveniently named index and the character which we've named the letter at that position of the word. So for example, let's say the word was hello, h would be, or the index would be 0 and the letter, which is the first character, would be H, and so on and so forth. Next, we check if the letter is in the vowel, so we are taking each individual letter and we're checking if it's a vowel, and then we are returning the following. So what does this mean? This means if the current letter is a vowel, we slice the word into two parts, from the current vowel to the end. So right here, because remember, once we are getting the letter and the index. So once we encounter a vowel, or that letter is a vowel, we also get the index of that letter, and now we slice from that index, from that point, until the end. So this is how the word starts. Then we concatenate to it. Remember, when appending strings, we call it concatenation. I might have forgot to mention that. So we concatenate to it the substring of word from the beginning up to the current vowel. And then finally we concatenate the entire word with A. And one last thing before moving on, I have this one added. Now this is not super important. I could comment it out, but it could cause some issues down the line. This is used because if the loop completes without finding any vowels, this line simply returns the original word with an A appended to its end. This should not happen typically if the input contains at least one vowel, but it's just used in case this if statement never gets validated. We never enter into the following line of code. We have this as a backup. As you can see, if I remove it, this will still work 100% of the time, unless somebody finds a word that does not contain a single vowel, which means that this line won't work. We go into the else statement, we go through the for loop, and this never works, so we never return from this function. So that's why I've added this, just in case that happens. So let's go ahead and test this one out. I'm going to run the code again. And let's think of a word that starts with 2, like for example, think. So think, right here, boom, there we go, ink thigh. Another word would be clamping. There we go. So you can see that we moved CL to the end and then added an A. Another word would be kraken. Oh, that's not how you write kraken. Oh my God. Kraken. So as you can see, we have K and R. They are both moved to the end, and we have I can cry. And I do recommend that you test out a few words in here. So for example, let me show you what would happen if we remove this line of code and we run in here again. And let's say I just type in KLJG. Let's see what happens. As you can see, we get none. Why? Because nothing was returned. We don't get an error, but we have none, which is not good. Now with this line of code, if I run again, KLJH, hit enter, as you can see, we simply add an A at the end, or AY, I don't know what you want to call it. So there we go. Now let's create the function that takes in a sentence. Okay, so this is the function that takes in a sentence and then splits it up. So if I hover over the split, let's see if it gives us any documentation, and it's stubborn. It does not want to give me any documentation. Anyway, I'm going to tell you what this does. So this line takes in a string sentence and splits it into a list of words using the spaces as delimiters. Delimiters meaning that where do we split this sentence out? where do we split it? We split it over, in this case, because we haven't provided it anything or any specific delimiter, it splits it out over the white spaces. So it divides the sentence into individual words, which are then stored in a list of words, or the list that is called words. Then we instantiate or we initialize a output, which is just an empty list, and I'm doing this because I'm going to go through every single word in this words list, and I'm going to append the output with that word converted to Pig Latin. So now we have the output as a list of words that are in Pig Latin. And finally, once we've done all of this, what we do is we return the empty space right here, as you can see, dot join the output. And again, for some reason, I'm not getting, finally, concatenates any number of strings. So I'm just going to tell you. So after all the words have been converted and appended to the output, this line concatenates all the elements of output into a single string with a space between each word. So the join method is used for this purpose, taking the list output and creating a string where each element is separated by a space. And if you're unsure of how this works, I highly recommend that you print out both the words list and the output list, and then you can see how all of this works. Actually, I might do this for you, but before we do that, we need to make some modifications to the while right here, because we're no longer taking words, we're taking sentences. Okay, so first of all, what I did is I put all of these into a function called main, and the reason I did this is just because it's a little bit professional and we're getting more lines, and this is something that you need to get used to. I also changed the word right here, or the prompt right here, from enter a word to enter a sentence, and then I changed the variable name to sentence, and I changed the function applied to this to sentence. Let's go ahead and test all of this out. Right click and run. Yes, stop. Let's hope this works from the first time. Hello there. My name is Michael and I love teaching students Python. Boom. Should have written a smaller sentence. Hello, hey, okay, I'm not sure what's happening, but basically let's check every single word and see if it's working. So hello, yes, it did work. We moved the H to the end. This is a single letter, and every single letter is, or every single word is converted into Pig Latin individually, and then we have all of this printed out. So for example, my, as you can see, my is a word that does not contain a single vowel, or at least it has a Y, but we consider the Y not a vowel in this case. Now imagine if we had all of this with a none in the middle, and this is why the following line right here was so important. So let's continue on. Is way, Michael may, and way, I a overlay. So everything seems to be working perfectly, even the teaching right here. So again, if you're unsure of how this works, or if you're unsure about anything when it comes to programming, always print things out. So right here, you can print out the words, and right here, I'm also going to print out the output, and I'm going to actually copy this because I don't want to write it again from scratch. So copy, rerun, because we've added some new code. Let's hit enter, and as you can see, this is the print word. So as you can see, it was, oh, I've written there incorrectly. So as you can see, now we have a list. So words right here, let me just move this again. So the print words, it's a list of words, it's a list of strings. As you can see, they were split over the empty space, and the output right here is a list of words that have been converted into the Pig Latin, and then they are joined over the free space, or when they are joined together, we add a free space. So for example, I can change this to say a star. Now look at the output that we'll get. Stop and run, hit enter, and look at the output that we get. So it's not a space, it's a star. So this is how the split and the join work. Okay, fellow Python programmers, congratulations on making it this far. I know this is not an easy program to create. There's a lot of string manipulations that you probably have not encountered before. That's why I always recommend that you try to do your best, and if you find yourself really overwhelmed, you can always go back and watch any of the videos that I suggest, or you can simply go through the playlist that I have for you. And to be honest with you, like, you have to think of it this way. Exercises are not meant to always be 100% completed. They are meant to challenge you to the brink and for you to know where your limits are. Try to do your best, understand the solution after trying to do your best, and that way you can know, all right, I need to learn this. You learn that, and then you progress, and then you find harder challenges, and you continue on throughout this process. Anyways, if you found this easy, even if you found it hard, but you properly understood it, now it's time for you to really challenge yourself with some extra challenges added to this program. So let's go ahead and check them out together. Okay, so it's time for your challenge, which is going to be complicated pigs. You'll need to create the following functionalities. First of all, if a word ends in a punctuation mark, so I'm going to leave you the punctuation marks somewhere in the description. If it ends in a punctuation mark, then the punctuation mark should remain at the end of the word after the transformation has been performed. Because keep in mind, if you're moving letters around and there's a punctuation mark, you're going to have, for example, a question or exclamation mark dead in the middle of a word, which does not look good. So if you find one of the punctuations, you should add them to the end. So for example, Python should become on Python, for example. Now, if a word begins with an uppercase letter, then its Big Latin representation should also begin with an uppercase letter, and the uppercase letter moved to the end of the word should be changed to a lowercase. So you've probably already seen this when we wrote the hello as the first word in the sentence that we've sent to the function. So you've seen that in the middle, smack in the middle of the Pig Latin translation of hello, we had a capitalized or uppercase H, which does not really look nice when you look at it. So in the second part of the challenge, what you'll need to do is you need to find that letter that is in the or if the word actually starts in the uppercase, then the Pig Latin translation should also start with an uppercase in the beginning, and the letter that was in the uppercase in the beginning should be taken down to the lowercase. Those challenges are not easy at all. So take your time, try to do your best. Pause the video right now and go do the challenge. Okay, so as you can see, I've made quite a few modifications in here. First of all, let's start with the following part where we try to identify if a word actually has a punctuation at the end of it. First of all, we initialize the punctuations, which are a comma, a dot, a exclamation mark, a question mark, and the semicolon. So this is basically the same thing that we've done with vowels. Next, we said that we are initializing the end punctuation. So what is it going to be? We initialize it at none. So is it going to be the exclamation mark, the interrogation mark, etc., etc.? We just need to have a placeholder for it, a variable that is named after it. Next, what we do is we check if word -1, so this is negative indexing, something that we haven't seen before as well, something that might have been hard for you, but there was a way for you to not use negative indexing. If you've used it, congratulations. You could have used also the length of the word to get the last letter in there. So we check -1 means that we start from the end of a word. So word -1 means that we're checking the last character inside of word, and if it is in punctuation, then we set the end punctuation to that word -1, and then we take word from the beginning until the end without the last letter. So we remove the punctuation from the word because we want to converted into Pig Latin on its own. Now, I made also a few changes in here. If you remember, right here and right here, we would simply return the word plus way and the word from the index to the end, and then from the beginning until the index. But this time what I did is I actually set it in a variable and then I returned it at the end. And the reason I did this is because I want to add this end punctuation at the end. Now this is something that's, I'm not gonna say advanced, but it's definitely in the realm of intermediate Python programming. If you haven't figured it out, that's okay, but through iteration you probably had to find this solution right here, where you had to stop returning this immediately. And by the way, something that's very important, if you did it differently than how I did it, that's completely fine. You don't have to do this exactly as I do. Keep that in mind. If you have a solution that works, it's not exactly like mine, that's completely fine. Keep in mind that you don't have copy and pasted code. So first of all, what I did is I set the word plus way to be the Pig Latin word. Then what I did is I did the same right here, and I also added a break, and the break simply breaks out of the for loop. So once we find a letter that is in the vowels and we create the Pig Latin word by sending all previous words or previous characters to the end and adding an A, then we break out of the for loop and basically we go right here and we add a punctuation if there is indeed one. So we check if and punctuation. This means that if the end punctuation is different than none, which means that it does exist, we simply append it to the end of the Pig Latin word. Or when we're talking about strings and appending, we use the word concatenation. So we concatenate that at the end, and finally we return the Pig Latin word. Now, you might be wondering about this else statement right here. If you remember, previously we had this not as an else statement, simply as a return. Now, why did we use an else? So this else statement is for the for loop. Notice that they are on the same level of indentation. This means that the else belongs to the for loop, not to the if. And what it means that if we don't break out, so if I hover over the else, oh my god, that's too long, I'm going to tell you, if we break out of a for loop, then the else block is not executed. But if we don't break out and we simply let the for loop finish, we have this else executed. Basically, this also prevents us from having an issue. Now, again, I can comment this one out, but you can see that immediately I have warnings that the local variable Pig Latin might not be referenced before assignment because we haven't created it anywhere. And you might be saying, well, I've created it right here, Michael. What the heck is happening? This might not work. If the first letter does not start with a vowel and we go through all of the words and then we don't find any vowels in a word, and right here we say that we want to get Pig Latin and append it with end punctuation, we are going to get an error. So if I try to right click and run, so I'm just going to JKL, hit enter, boom, you can see cannot access local variable Pig Latin word where it is not associated with a value. There's no value given to it because we might have something like this. So again, I'm going to uncomment this, which makes sure that we always have a Pig Latin word. So JKL, boom, there we go. It does work. So this helps us prevent an error from happening. And that's basically it. Let's go ahead and test it out right now. I want to stop printing the words and stop printing the outputs. This was just for debugging. So right here, I'm going to write hello. Not only one punctuation mark because we haven't figured all of that out. Michael is really happy. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. So hit enter and boom, as you can see, so hello, hey, we have the punctuation mark still at the end. This one is still at the end and this one is also still at the end. Now you might be thinking, well, you can definitely cheat the system, especially if you add two, for example, exclamation marks. So hello with two exclamation marks. There we go. You can see that you can break it. If you want to challenge yourself further, you can try and find all the punctuation marks at the end and ship all of them to the end. If you want, you can even challenge yourself further, where if you have a punctuation mark in the middle of a word, you can also send it to the end. Now that would be really, really fun. But anyway, time for the second part of the challenge, where we have uppercase letters. Okay, so this was pretty simple. First of all, in the vowels, I not only check if it starts with A, E, I, O, U, I also check if it starts with the A, E, I, O, U, but which are in the uppercase. So now I check for all of them. And then what I do is I also check if the word at position 0 dot is upper, then the Pig Latin word becomes the Pig Latin word but capitalized. So when I right click and I run, in here I'm going to just try a single letter. So hello, or actually let's try also hello Python, Python, exclamation mark, boom, hit enter. As you can see, the first letter was capitalized and the first letter was capitalized. And right here, what I did is I checked on the word, not on the Pig Latin, remember, on the exact word. I checked if the first letter was in the uppercase using the is upper. This is something that we did check. Then I took the Pig Latin word and I said Pig Latin dot capitalized, which puts the first letter in the uppercase. So now let's go ahead and test everything out together. Let's see, did I copy something nice? No, I haven't. Let's say hello there, fellow Python developers. I am so excited to teach you Python. Hit enter. Hello, hey, as you can see, all the words that were actually capitalized or had a capitalized letter at the start all start with a capitalized letter as well. Alright, my favorite Python programmers. I know some of you might be sitting like, what did I just watch? This was very complicated for me. Some of you are sitting like, oh my god, I finally learned how to slice, I learned how to index through strings, I learned how to work with enumerate, I learned the upper, I learned the capitalized. We've learned so much in this video. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I highly recommend that you go through it again and again. There's no shame in going through it multiple times. If you have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments below. As I told you, I'm very active. I always go through the comments within 12 to 24 hours and so on. But anyways, in the next video, I have no clue what we'll be doing, but it's definitely going to be a challenging and exciting exercise. So if you want to further your Python development skills, then you have to watch this video. Yes, click right about here. Time to continue on your Python programming journey. Let's go.